The Middle East, a land where deserts stretch endlessly, where empires rose and fell, where prophets spoke words that changed the world. It is not just a region, it is the cradle of civilization, the birthplace of writing, of laws, of cities, of faiths that billions follow to this day. To understand the Middle East is to understand the heartbeat of human history itself. Our story begins thousands of years ago, on the fertile lands between two mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This was Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. And here, humanity first made the leap from scattered tribes to organized societies. It was here that the Sumerians built the world's first cities, Uruk, Ur, Eridu. Here they carved symbols into clay tablets, creating cuneiform, the world's first system of writing. They built temples called ziggurats that towered over their cities, monuments to their gods and their power. The Sumerians gave way to the Akkadians, and then to the Babylonians. Hammurabi, king of Babylon, left us one of history's earliest legal codes etched in stone, declaring that society must be ruled not just by strength, but by law. His words echoed across the centuries, shaping how people thought about justice. To the north, the Assyrians rose with brutal force, building an empire through fear and conquest, leaving behind libraries filled with tablets that preserved stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest known epic. And in Babylon, under Nebuchadnezzar II, magnificent walls rose, and the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, were said to have bloomed in the desert. This land of innovation and empire was not alone. To the west, along the Nile, Egypt flourished. To the east, Persia would soon emerge. And at the heart of it all, the Middle East became a crossroads, a place where trade, ideas, armies, and faiths all collided. The story of the Middle East was only beginning. From the fertile valleys of Mesopotamia, the story of the Middle East spread outward, and new powers began to rise. Among them was Persia, a land of vast plateaus and rugged mountains. In the 6th century before Common Era, Cyrus the Great forged the Persian Empire, a realm so vast it stretched from the Mediterranean to India. Unlike the brutal rule of the Assyrians before them, the Persians built their empire on tolerance and administration. They respected the customs and religions of the people they conquered. Under Cyrus and his successors, roads were built, trade thrived, and the empire became a patchwork of cultures bound together under a single crown. But no empire lasts forever. In the 4th century before Common Era, a young king from a small land in northern Greece set his eyes on Persia. His name was Alexander of Macedon, known to history as Alexander the Great. With lightning speed, his armies crushed the mighty Persians, sweeping through the Middle East, toppling empires and founding cities. Among them was Alexandria in Egypt, which would become one of the greatest centers of learning in the ancient world. Though Alexander's empire fractured after his death, his conquest left a permanent mark on the Middle East. Greek culture and language mixed with Persian traditions in what we call the Hellenistic Age. Cities flourished, trade expanded, and philosophy, science, and art all found new homes in this crossroads of civilizations. In time, Rome arrived, first as a rival to the East, then as a conqueror. By the 1st century before Common Era, the Roman Empire stretched into the Middle East, claiming lands like Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. Roman legions marched through deserts and built cities of stone, aqueducts, amphitheaters, and roads that survive in ruins today. When the Roman Empire split, its eastern half, the Byzantine Empire, held on to much of the Middle East. From its capital, Constantinople, it projected both power and faith. The Byzantines brought with them Christianity, which spread through the region, establishing churches and communities in lands where Judaism had already taken deep root. By now, the Middle East had seen countless conquerors, countless empires, but a new force was rising, one not built on the sword alone, but on words, faith, and revelation. From the deserts of Arabia, a voice would call out, that would forever change the destiny of the Middle East and the world. It was the 7th century, and the Middle East stood at the edge of a new era. On the Arabian Peninsula, an expanse of deserts, trade routes, and nomadic tribes, a man named Muhammad was born in the city of Mecca. In the year 610, he received a revelation that would ignite a faith followed by billions today: Islam. Muhammad preached the message of one God, of justice, compassion, and unity. At first he was resisted, even driven from his hometown. But from exile in Medina, he built a community of followers who soon transformed Arabia. By the time of his death in 632, the tribes of Arabia had united under the banner of Islam. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. Within just a century, Muslim armies swept across the Middle East, North Africa, and into Europe and Asia. From the sands of Arabia, the Rashidun, Umayyad, and later Abbasid caliphates created an empire that stretched farther than Rome at its height. But the Islamic Golden Age was not only about conquest, it was about knowledge. In cities like Damascus, Cairo, Cordoba, and most famously Baghdad, scholars translated Greek philosophy, advanced mathematics, studied medicine, mapped the stars, and wrote poetry that still inspires today. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad became the beating heart of world knowledge. While Europe stumbled through the Dark Ages, the Middle East shone as a beacon of science and culture. Mosques rose with elegant domes and towering minarets. Arabic became the language of learning, art, and trade. The Quran shaped not only religion, but law, literature, and society. Pilgrims traveled to Mecca. Merchants carried silk and spices along ancient roads, and the Middle East thrived as the crossroads of continents. Yet, the region was not free of struggle. Different dynasties competed for power. The Abbasids ruled from Baghdad, but rival states rose in North Africa and Spain. The Fatimids in Cairo, the Seljuks from Central Asia, and countless others carved their names into the Middle Eastern map. The unity of the early caliphate splintered, but the cultural brilliance of the Islamic Golden Age endured. And soon, a new challenge would come from the West, one that would set the Middle East aflame with war for centuries: the Crusades. By the 11th century, the Middle East had become both a center of faith and a prize for rival powers. When Christian pilgrims faced obstacles reaching Jerusalem, Pope Urban II called for a holy war, a crusade. Armies of knights from Europe marched east, and in 1099, they captured Jerusalem in a wave of bloodshed. For nearly 2 centuries, Crusader states clung to the eastern Mediterranean, building castles that still stand as silent witnesses. But the Muslim world rallied. Under leaders like Saladin, Jerusalem was recaptured, and the Crusaders were eventually driven out. These wars left scars, but also exchanges of knowledge, trade, and culture that tied East and West closer together, even through conflict. Yet a far greater storm was coming from the East. In the 13th century, the Mongols swept across the world like wildfire. In 1258, they reached Baghdad, the jewel of the Abbasid Caliphate, and destroyed it with shocking brutality. The libraries burned, the rivers ran black with ink and red with blood. The Islamic Golden Age was dealt a devastating blow. But from the ashes, new powers arose. The Mamluks of Egypt stopped the Mongols at Ain Jalut, protecting the heartlands of Islam. And in Anatolia, a small Turkish tribe planted the seeds of what would become one of the most powerful empires in history, the Ottomans. By the 15th century, the Ottomans, led by Mehmed the Conqueror, captured Constantinople, renaming it Istanbul. With this, the Byzantine Empire fell, and the Middle East gained a new master. The Ottoman Empire expanded across 3 continents, ruling over Arabs, Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Kurds, and countless others. For centuries, the Ottomans were the guardians of Islam's holy cities, Mecca and Medina. Their empire was rich, powerful, and diverse, with magnificent mosques, bustling markets, and armies feared across Europe and Asia. The Middle East once again stood at the center of world affairs. But even mighty empires fade. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Ottoman Empire weakened. Corruption, internal struggles, and the rise of European powers chipped away at its strength. Britain, France, and later Russia saw the Middle East not only as a battleground of empires, but as a region of immense strategic importance. The discovery of oil would only magnify that importance. The black gold beneath the sands promised wealth and power beyond imagination. European powers began carving up the Middle East, signing secret deals like the Sykes-Picot Agreement during World War I. Borders were drawn with little regard for the people who lived there, lines that still shape the region today. After the Great War, the Ottoman Empire collapsed. Its lands were divided. The French took Syria and Lebanon, the British took Iraq, Palestine, and Jordan. Egypt became a British protectorate. The Arabian Peninsula saw the rise of new kingdoms, including what would become Saudi Arabia. The Middle East was no longer ruled from Istanbul. Instead, its fate was increasingly tied to foreign powers. But nationalist movements grew as Arabs, Persians, Kurds, and others sought independence and identity in a world reshaped by colonialism. The 20th century brought both hope and turmoil. After World War II, new nations emerged across the Middle East. Some turned to monarchies, others to republics. Some leaned toward Western influence, while others embraced socialism or pan-Arabism. But independence did not bring peace. In 1948, the creation of the State of Israel, born out of the ashes of the Holocaust, ignited a conflict that continues to shape the region. Wars erupted between Israel and its Arab neighbors. Palestinians were displaced, and their struggle became a defining issue of the Middle East. At the same time, oil wealth transformed countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and later the Gulf states. Skyscrapers rose from the desert, fortunes were made, and the world became dependent on Middle Eastern oil. Yet, this wealth was uneven, and many nations still struggled with poverty and instability. The Cold War made the Middle East a chessboard for the United States and the Soviet Union. Coups, revolutions, and proxy wars rippled through Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution shocked the world, replacing a Western-backed Shah with an Islamic Republic. Reshaping global politics, conflicts seemed endless. The Iran-Iraq War, the Lebanese Civil War, the Gulf War. And then, in 2001, the 9/11 attacks drew the United States deep into the Middle East once again, launching wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that would shape the 21st century. Today, the Middle East remains a land of contrasts. Ancient ruins stand beside glittering modern towers. Sacred cities draw millions of pilgrims, while political tensions ignite unrest. The Arab Spring of 2011 promised change, but left behind both hope and chaos. From Tunisia to Syria, civil wars, sectarian divisions, and foreign interventions continued to shake the region. Yet, the Middle East is also a land of resilience. It is the birthplace of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam faiths that guide billions of lives. It is the home of poetry, music, and traditions that stretch back thousands of years. And it is still the world's crossroads, where the destinies of nations meet. The story of the Middle East is not just about war and struggle. It is about survival, innovation, and the power of culture. From the first cities of Mesopotamia to the oil fields of today, from prophets to poets, conquerors to common people, the Middle East has always been at the heart of human history. And though its future is uncertain, one truth remains: the Middle East will always matter. It is where our story as a civilization began, and where history continues to be written with every passing day. And that is the story of the Middle East, a land where civilization was born, where empires clashed, where faith and culture shaped the destiny of billions. If you've traveled with us through this incredible journey, let us know in the comments which era of Middle Eastern history fascinates you the most. Don't forget to like this video, Share it with your friends who love history, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another epic story from the past. Together, we'll keep history alive, one story at a time.